Okay guys, now I want to talk about duration. What the heck is duration? So duration is how long you're going to stick to this plan. And this is such an important metric, guys, it really is. I don't care if it's 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. Hopefully you're starting to get a formulation of a plan now, the markets, the time frame, all this kind of stuff, the strategies you're going to employ, the boundaries we're pulling in, the risk management. We're starting to develop something that's pretty decent, right? It's a good starting point anyway. And the thing is, we need to look and say, well, how long are we going to stick to this plan before we start tweaking it, before we start adjusting it? Because the very worst thing you can do is you can go through all this effort and kind of put the trading plan together and write a trading plan, and then you don't stick to it. You kind of do it for a couple of weeks and you go, this thing's not working out. It's not what I wanted. I'm not making money out of it. Let's do something else. You need to make the commitment now of saying, you know what? I'm going to stick to this plan for 30 days, for 60 days. And I'm not going to touch it. The important thing is, guys, do not meddle. Make the commitment and stick to it. It's an exercise in discipline on its own, right? And the important thing is that if you've accepted the risk that we talked about earlier in the risk management section, there's no surprises here. The worst case scenario is you lose that amount of money, but you're still getting data, and that's the point, guys. The important thing is here with the plan, we're getting data on what happened so that we can iterate, which we're going to talk about next, so we can improve. We have this foundation, we have this plan, we want to take bits out, we want to put bits in and build and build and build and build. And if you think about it, how long it's going to take you, you can see how quickly you're going to get to a point where you've got a decent trading plan that's working very, very well for you. And so how long are we going to stick to the plan? I recommend kind of, 30, 60 or 90 days, up to you, you choose it, but make the kind of solid commitment that you're not going to meddle with it. If 90 days is too long, then you can make it, go with 30. Try it with 30. If you know you're a meddler or you know you're going to mess around with stuff, just go for the 30 days. And like I say, you need the data, because the problem you have is that if you start meddling with the trading plan, you don't know then if the plan's working because you've not stuck to it. Now, if you kind of break the rules, that's okay, sort of. We'll talk about that in a second, but make sure you log it, because what you don't want is to kind of affect the data, and actually you're using data from I think a time when you broke the rules, a time when you didn't do something you should have done, and so you must log that. So 30, 60, 90 days is a good benchmark. All right, so iteration. Only once the time period is up do we change the plan. And like I said earlier, this is the kind of important thing. This is where you've got to come in and you've got to step up to the plate and do what needs to be done. You set the time period, you do not change, and we do not iterate until, even if it appears like the plan is completely poorly performing, that's good. In a crazy way, that's good, because you can look at it after the period and go, right, I lost money with this plan. How did I lose money? Why? You've got all this beautiful, valuable data that you can do and adapt. Story for you. I was trading Dow, I was trading on the futures exchange, and it was much kind of quieter markets than it is now. When I'm filming this, it might be changing when you're watching this. But I had a specific stop loss of 10 ticks, and that was quite adequate for the conditions. And I was trading this specific strategies, and over this period, I think it was a month, whatever it was, I hadn't made any money. I'd lost money, and I can't. You know what? That's rubbish. I'm gonna have to discard this. This strategy's not working. I need to move on. But actually, when I dug into the plan, I got all the charts out, and I looked. And what I did is actually, from an operational perspective, this may help you and may not. Printed out all the charts, laid them all down on the floor, looked around and gone, okay, what's going on? Marked on where my entry was, marked on where my stop loss was, marked on what I was trying to do, and looked at it. And when I looked at it, the majority of the trades went in my favor, but I just got stopped out. And so I looked at it and I thought, well, you know what? I'm reading the market quite right, but there's something wrong here. I'm too early with my entry. I'm too early because the market's kind of going against me. There's a mean reversion type play. It's not working. But ultimately, to cut a long story short, there was two things I could do. One was adjust my entry and work on kind of coming a little bit later. The second was just widen the stop. That's the easiest thing to do. Is that, okay, well, let's work on that later, the entry, but for now, if I widen the stop to 15 ticks from 10, then the game changes. And then when I went back and looked at that, what would you know? It was a nice, profitable strategy. And so all I had to do was reduce the position size a bit, widen that stop to 15 ticks until I started to work out the operational perspective, how I could get in a little bit later and keep that stop tighter. And it was an easy fix. I would have chucked that plan away, chucked that strategy away, never looked at it again if I hadn't have looked at it, assessed it, and gone, you know what? It's a good plan, it's a good strategy, but it just needs a few tweaks. And if you did this with those prior trades, you'd be up X. And so this is why we have to stick to the plan and why we iterate and why it's not the end of the world. If you're having a losing streak, if it's not working out for you, why you shouldn't ditch it, because you might assess it later on and go, you know what, on the face of it, it looks awful. I'm looking at the numbers are bad, but actually when I dig down into it, small little changes becomes a great strategy, and that became a beautiful strategy. So think about that. So only once the time period is up do we change. And we look at the performance, we look at how well we stuck to it, and we are objectively analysing this, guys. So we're not looking at it from a perspective of we made money. That was kind of one area we look at that I talked about there before. But we're also looking at the case of how we stuck to the plan, the logistics of the operation. So in other words, did the hours suit you? Was the market presenting opportunity? How many opportunities did we get? Did you find that there weren't enough opportunities? Could you sit down and do the work you said you were going to? And this is where we iterate. And this is where we say, okay, there weren't as many opportunities as I thought there were. Could do with more opportunities. I need to adjust the market, or I need to change my strategy, or I need to do something different. And this is the kind of thing we're doing here. We're looking at it as a whole. Yes, performance is a big metric, but it's also, I said I was going to trade from this house, but I got caught up at work doing this, or I got caught up with family time doing this. That's fine, but let's iterate and adjust it and say, well, I can only put the time in here and here and here. That's what we're doing. Instead of being frustrated, we're having a version 2 and a version 2.1 and we're adjusting, making big changes, then little changes, big changes, then little changes. And then going back to the kind of the loss thing, I've discussed this before, but it's definitely worth touching on now, is that what's the common theme of loss? Back in that example, it was my stop was too tight. Is the common theme of loss that you're trading at a certain time and day that's not really conducive to success? Is it you're trading a certain market that, again, is not conducive to success? What is it? And often, and this is a great question that was brought up in the presentation, what if I've got kind of 200 trades to look at? How do I kind of analyze them? The best thing you can do is to cluster the trades. So you get your 10 worst losers, you get your 10 winners, the 10 best winners, you separate them and you look for a theme. There's nearly always a theme, guys. With those losers, it's like there's something there that caused the losers in the majority of them. Maybe you did something you shouldn't have done. Maybe you went over your kind of allocated risk, where you did this, maybe that is something normally that you can find a thread that you can really kind of drill into and eliminate, or stick to. If it's your profitable ones, you can say, yeah, look, that really worked well. Let me add that to the plan. And it's about taking things out that don't work and putting things in that do. Maybe you need to put in more boundaries so that you align yourself with the stuff that's working and kind of remove yourself from the stuff that's not working. And that could be, hey, I'm kind of chopping myself up during lunchtime if you're a day trader. When I didn't put the boundary in of reducing lunchtime trades, let me add that boundary. That fixes that. And you can see how you can start to improve with this. Maybe you have to have stricter risk criteria, but whatever it is, it's very important to kind of look at the data of the plan, because that's why we're doing it ultimately, to get data, to look at it, not only from a P&L perspective and from a loss or a profit perspective, but also from operations perspective. How well we stuck to it, what's challenging about it, and then iterating and improving from that.